convene the regular meeting for Lompoc City Council Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. We'll now reconvene. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Ball.
Present.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Present.
Councilmember Cordova. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Victor Vega.
Here.
Mayor Janelle Osborne.
Here. Report on action taken during closed session, Mr. Malave.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. City Council met in closed session to discuss the two items on the closed session agenda. One, labor negotiations. Staff and council had a discussion on that, and council gave direction to staff. And then one item on existing litigation, City of Lompoc versus Mission Hills Community Services District. Staff gave a presentation to council on that item. On both items, no reportable action was taken.
Thank you. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This evening, we are once again broadcasting via the internet, so you can click on cityoflompoc.com's City Council button and then view City Council meetings, and you should have your streaming option back, as well as on the Comcast Channel 23 and the radio at KPEG 100.9 FM. Due to the public health order, we are closed to the public for in-person commentary, but you may have sent an email in before 4 p.m. today, or you can call in this evening during the public comment on the agenda item or during oral communications. The number is 805-875-8201. And remember to mute your TV, PC, or radio when you do call in. On the agenda this evening, we have the Santa Barbara County Public Health Department's Animal Services to provide a presentation regarding the Lompoc Animal Shelter and Animal Services in Lompoc, as well as a presentation from New Beginnings regarding a proposed safe parking program. And I know both are calling in, so we will see who is on the line. Who's calling in for our first presentation?
The first presentation will be from the Santa Barbara County Animal Services.
Okay.
Angela, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, let me get you all set.
Perfect.
We appreciate your patience as we trial and error all our methodologies for remote presentations.
Alrighty, Angela. So whenever you are ready, you may begin.
Great. Thank you. Mayor Osborne and members of the council, thank you so much for allowing time on your agenda for this presentation. As the new director of Santa Barbara County Animal Services, please know that I am committed to providing exceptional service to your constituents, both human and animal. After a brief overview of Santa Barbara County Animal Services, tonight's presentation will address two key questions. One, why was the Lompoc shelter temporarily closed? And two, how will Santa Barbara County Animal Services continue to provide services to Lompoc? Just a quick note that all of the photos in tonight's presentation are animals from Lompoc. So just a brief overview. Our current fiscal year budget for animal services is $5.43 million. We have 36 employees when fully staffed. For field operations, we have 9 animal control officers or ACOs and 1 supervising ACO. 2 of our ACO positions are open, but we're hoping to have them filled within the next month. We have 8 municipal contracts that provide 36% of our total budget. Only 25% of our budget is recovered through fee revenue for our services. The remaining 39% is covered by the county and other funding sources. Our current contract with the City of Lompoc equals 6% of our total budget, while 9.6% of Santa Barbara County's population resides in Lompoc. Pre-COVID, Animal Services was taking care of approximately 6,000 animals a year, with about 1,000, between 16 and 17%, coming in through the Lompoc shelter. The fee basis for all 8 of our municipal contracts is the same, based on per capita, regardless of whether or not there is a physical shelter in the jurisdiction. In fact, it's important to note that not all contract cities have a shelter in their midst. For our 8 contract cities, the average distance from the city center to the nearest shelter is 17.2 miles, and the distance from Lompoc to Santa Maria is 23.7. Now on to the first important question of the evening. Why was the Lompoc shelter temporarily closed? There are 3 key reasons for our decision, and I'll go into detail in the following slides. So silos versus a countywide vision. We have a new vision for Santa Barbara County Animal Services based on a countywide infrastructure for providing services, and the emphasis is on services here. Historically, the management model for animal services was carved up between 3 shelters in Santa Barbara, Santa Maria, and Lompoc. Animal staff, volunteers, and resources were siloed by these boundaries, creating duplication of effort and inefficiency, as well as a lack of cohesive service throughout our county. By utilizing a countywide infrastructure, we can create a functional economy of scale in terms of service provision, rather than keeping shelters, staffing, resources, and animals siloed with operational barriers. In addition, we're so fortunate to have strong partnerships throughout Santa Barbara County. And by embracing a countywide model, even with these partnerships, we can create opportunities for larger impact, eliminate duplication of efforts, and target fundraising for critical projects. I want to share an example of how we used our countywide infrastructure to increase service capability, utilize our best staffing and facilities for animal care, and leverage our partnerships to the benefit of Lompoc, even before we closed the shelter. On October 22nd of this past year, we impounded 104 Chihuahuas from a Lompoc residence. Instead of going to the Lompoc shelter, these dogs were transported directly to Santa Maria for veterinary care and sheltering overnight. This countywide infrastructure allowed us to use the facility that could provide the best care and most humane housing, and it was only a 27-minute drive from downtown Lompoc to the Santa Maria shelter. While our ACOs were still busy on site at the residence, our staff reached out through our partnership network, and within just hours, we had found transfer placements for 102 dogs. Only 2 very pregnant dogs remained in our care, where they delivered 7 puppies, and I'm happy to report that all of the dogs have been altered and adopted now. This example highlights the fact that even prior to a temporary closure of the Lompoc shelter, we were still making decisions to benefit the animals at the best facility where we can provide the service. A little bit of history on the Lompoc shelter. So originally, this was a residence that was converted into a shelter 50 years ago. It's been retrofitted over the years, but the original structure was never designed to house the animals. And if you've never been to this facility, I would really be happy to set up a tour. I think it's really beneficial to actually do a walkthrough and see it. So I'm happy to loop back to that in the future. There was a partial remodel that was completed in 2013. The purpose of this project was to improve the employee and visitor areas, including the front office and animal intake area. A public restroom was constructed because there wasn't any public restroom up to that point. And accessibility was improved in these areas to meet ADA requirements. There were also updates to the veterinary exam room, community cat room, and cat isolation area. But it's important to note that no improvements were made to the dog kennel section of the shelter. Here's a funding summary for the sources of this remodel project. The City of Lompoc contributed $24,000 in CDBG funding, and the County of Santa Barbara provided almost $434,000. These next 2 slides show some of the improvements made to the front office and animal intake area. This is the most public area of the shelter, and then our community cat room. And then we move to the dog kennels. As I mentioned before, no improvements have been made to this dog kennel section of the shelter. The majority of these kennels are 50 years old. At the time they were constructed, the industry standard for housing of animals was vastly different than it is today. 50 years ago, longer-term housing was not the objective of sheltering. The majority of animals were euthanized, if not claimed by owners or adopted within a couple of days. The main humane and safety issues in these kennels include inadequate space for each dog in the individual kennels, especially for larger breeds, the narrow corridor between the kennels, which is a safety hazard for staff when handling animals and increases stress for dogs while they're in the kennels. There are zero noise and odor control systems, and the open trench creates safety and sanitation issues. The next few slides show the eroding cinder block, decay, and rusted components that create safety issues for both staff and animals. Not pictured are the public pathways along the perimeter of the kennels and driveway where the asphalt is eroding and in need of resurfacing to prevent a trip or slipping hazard. All of this leads to the bad news conclusion. It is not currently humane for the animals nor safe for our staff to use the Lompoc dog kennels in their current condition. And just so that we're all on the same page with what the expectation around humane kenneling is, this is what a shelter looks like today. This is a modern day example of a humane way to house animals while they're waiting for adoption. In addition to addressing the physical and emotional needs of animals, modern day shelters also maximize a facility's operational efficiency and effectiveness. So the bad news is over, and now is where I get to share some good news. COVID brought an unanticipated silver lining to the animal services industry throughout the United States, an opportunity to look at things differently from a community perspective. Throughout this pandemic, caring people across the world stepped up to care for animals in shelters. In Santa Barbara County alone, hundreds of animals have been cared for by foster families rather than live in cages or kennels. In one of the most difficult moments of our lifetime, we've had an opportunity to change the way communities view and interact with animal services. This has turned the historic model of sheltering upside down as experts across the field are working to create a better vision for cats, dogs, and other companion animals. This vision is coming together in the Haas model, which I'll expand on momentarily. This brings us to the second important question. How will animal services continue to provide services to Lompoc? First, all of our services are still available, and they haven't stopped being available, not for a moment. It's important not to confuse services with a brick and mortar shelter. In fact, many of our services are not dependent on a physical shelter at all. All services are still available, and Lompoc residents do not have to drive to Santa Maria. For our field and public safety operations, there's been no change. An animal control officer is still stationed at the Lompoc shelter every day. And as a result of COVID, most of our services were moved to appointment-based for public safety. But we've discovered as an industry just how beneficial this system has been for all involved. Members of the community, animals, staff, volunteers. We will be maintaining an appointment-based system in the future for all of our services, including adoptions, owner relinquishments, lost pet reunification, pet food bank, veterinary care, and licensing. Many of our services were also moved online, improving efficiency in customer service and saving resources. And we are continuing to explore different delivery methods and innovations for providing enhanced services. Here's one example of how we are enhancing our service model: home deliveries of lost pets. This dog was turned in as a stray from Lompoc, but was sheltered at Santa Maria. Luckily, he'd been recently neutered and microchipped by Care for Paws, so we were able to identify his owner. After attempting to reach her by phone for several days, one of our ACOs went to her home address. While she was unable to pay the full redemption fee, we offered her a discount, and our ACO provided door-to-door delivery service for Tunchi, resulting in this happy reunion. I could give a whole separate presentation on the Human Animal Support Services, or HAS model, that has been emerging over this last year. But simply, the HAS model is transforming the way shelters care for animals and their people. And we believe the future of animal services is about community, with the primary goal to keep animals and pets together. The HAS model is solution-based to reduce intake and move pets through the shelter system quickly and reallocate resources to serve more animals and people outside of the shelter walls. Santa Barbara County Animal Services is committed to the HAS model and has been accepted as a Tier 2 pilot shelter. We are actively exploring more community-based approaches. For example, similar to community-based policing, community-based animal control is also needed. Community members need to trust our ACOs and think of them as coming to help. Also, volunteer and community involvement doesn't have to be shelter-based. At the time of the temporary closure, there were only about 5 active volunteers at the shelter. But we believe there is more volunteer capacity in the Lompoc community, and there are many more volunteer opportunities outside the shelter, with pet food distribution, special adoption events, vaccine and licensing clinics, free microchip teams that go to dog parks, pet supply stores, and other community events where dogs are present, just to name a few. And finally, we have some next steps for satellite services and partnership opportunities at the Lompoc shelter. We will be launching a new pilot shelter schedule to provide better customer service via phone and appointments. We will stay open later during the week and will be open on both Saturday and Sunday at our Santa Barbara and Santa Maria shelters. But this new schedule includes 2 days a week for scheduled appointments and walk-ins at the Lompoc shelter. This new schedule is dependent on the current COVID surge. Our staff is extremely vulnerable to exposure, but optimistically, we hope for March, but it could be April or June. For satellite services, while we will not house animals overnight at the Lompoc shelter, the satellite services will include things like adoption appointments, lost pet reunification, pet food bank and resources, vaccinations, owner surrenders, and licensing. I want to emphasize again the importance of a service model versus a shelter model. Simply staffing a shelter without prioritizing services and programs isn't a smart use of resources. But being more strategic and targeted with staffing enables us to channel time and resources into services, new technologies and programs to increase support to the Lompoc community. Some of these new programs include the home delivery for the lost pets, which I just gave you an example of. We're going to be launching new licensing tags with QR codes so that members of the public can easily scan with their phone and help get a pet home. Finding Rover, which is a new technology that uses facial recognition software for lost pets. Alternatives to impound, having our ACOs work more in the field to return animals directly to the home instead of impounding them. And a community focus, having some meet and greets and community events so that community members get to know our ACOs. These are just a few of the ideas and innovations that we're excited about launching in 2021. We're also engaged in an ongoing exploration with our core partners to identify ways to increase collaboration. We are committing to increase spay-neuter support for Care for Paws, and we're bringing some of our nonprofit partners like CAPA and the Animal Care Foundation together to see if we can join efforts and leverage more fundraising. In addition, we are open to creative ways for using the Lompoc shelter to benefit the community. What is the best use of the site given the post-COVID future of animal services? But we also need to come to terms with the limitations of the physical shelter and site, including nighttime exterior lighting, parking, traffic safety, the dog kennels. And we also need to determine what the appropriate use would be based on our capital resources and staffing available. In conclusion, we have to re-educate ourselves about how we measure impact and success in animal services. We've trained ourselves and our community to believe that warehousing animals in brick and mortar shelters is the only way to help them. And then we measure our impact and success by the number of animals inside the shelter. Instead, we need to start measuring success by how many animals we save from ever entering the shelter at all. Not by denying them access or closing the door, but by providing options and support for pet owners and putting more effort into locating owners in the field rather than impounding. Service is not dependent on a physical shelter, and in fact, freeing up resources tied to running a physical shelter will actually serve your constituents better by allowing us to channel staff time and funding into the services that they need. By being open to the changing vision of animal welfare, you will be positioning Lompoc at the front of the line, and you will get value for your contract dollars. Thank you so much for your time, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Angela, for the presentation. And while the model is necessary and the changes are understood, my question first and foremost is this being done in Santa Barbara and Santa Maria? You came before Lompoc and asked for an increase in our renewed contract without notifying us of any of these needs or changes of attitude or delivery of service. The lack of education in front of these changes is what has upset our community the most. Saying that it is a countywide application fails to understand the uniqueness of Lompoc and the issues we have here. I love everything being moved online. 30% of our community may not have online. 30% of our community may not be able to respond the way you want to do business. And so before making decisions based on a contract that you've asked us to sign for very specific services, it is more important to come to us and make this presentation ahead of that rather than 6 months after the occurrence. So I'm going to open the floor to questions from the rest of my council, and we'll start with Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to mirror what you're talking about, Mayor. I guess less service should mean less money for Lompoc. Currently, we're paying almost $25,000 a month, or 20. Yeah. I mean, what's our break going to be on this now?
Is that a question to me?
Yes.
So, Madam Mayor, and I can't actually see which council member because I'm still on the share screen, but council members. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, our contract model and fee basis is based on per capita. And all of our contract cities are charged the same amount regardless of whether or not there's a shelter in their community or not. It's a fee for service, not sheltering. I do apologize, and I agree with you. We've been going through an extraordinary time with COVID. I am a new director to Animal Service. I started last October. And in a perfect world, I would have loved to come and given you this presentation in advance. I agree with that, and I do apologize because I think it's very important for us all to be on the same page and be informed as we're moving through decisions. And I will do my very best not to have that happen again. As for the question or comment around whether or not these changes are being applied at the Santa Barbara and Santa Maria shelters, many of the changes in the technologies and the appointment-based systems are being applied across the board. We have reduced the housing of animals at the Santa Barbara shelter. We do have some facility issues with the kennels there, and we are concentrating a lot of our animal care in Santa Maria because it is the newest and most expansive shelter.
Councilmember Starbuck.
So the answer to the question is, I guess you're going to continue to charge us the same for less.
All of our contracts will be based on the same fee for all of our municipal cities.
Any other questions for Animal Service from the county? Councilmember Ball.
Yeah, I was just curious. I'm taking a slightly different approach. I know a lot of people are paying attention and listening, and I've been learning about animal services as quickly as possible. Can you elaborate just so the public understands what Care for Paws is and some of the options and services that are provided collaboratively here in Lompoc?
Yes, Care for Paws is an amazing partner and nonprofit in our community. They run a mobile veterinary service for low cost and often free veterinary care and spay-neuter services. They have during COVID been pretty amazingly running a pet food bank that has been distributing about 10,000 pounds of food a month. It's been an extraordinary effort. We have partnered with them to increase the number of pet food distribution days in Lompoc. And we're looking at entering into a MOU with Care for Paws this next year. It'll be our first to really be more collaborative on the affordable veterinary care and spay-neuter.
Any other questions? Thank you for the presentation, and we look forward to hearing new information and redrawing up the contract so that it reflects the new approach. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And now we will make a transition to the presentation from New Beginnings regarding proposed safe parking program. come to the microphone right here. Sorry. I didn't realize you were in the room.
And, yeah, we have a PowerPoint. How do I, Sure.
Did you send your PowerPoint over to?
I did.
One I put on today.
Stacy, and then,
Gotcha.
yeah.
It's on the desktop, Susan? Yours is quicker for you?
Thank
And then once the screen comes up,
Okay.
While you're waiting, you might as well go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of City Council. Thank you so much for inviting us tonight to educate you about the Safe Parking Program. I am joined this evening by my program manager, Casey Roach, and our North County case manager, Christine Kleppinger. And, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm Christine Schwartz. I'm the executive director for New Beginnings, and we operate the Safe Parking Program. I can go ahead and start talking a little bit while we're waiting for the PowerPoint. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Safe Parking Program, we have operated successfully in the cities of Santa Barbara and Goleta and the unincorporated areas of the county surrounding those cities since 2004. The program initially started as a shelter overnight for RVs and for individuals and families. There we go. For individuals and families who were living out of their vehicles, and rapidly expanded and grew to accommodate both RV dwellers as well as people who are living out of their vans and cars and trucks. And today we, can I go ahead now? Yeah. Oh, look at that. Today we operate the program under New Beginnings, and a little bit of background information about New Beginnings. We are a longtime community safety net organization in Santa Barbara. We operate 4 programs. One is the Safe Parking Program. The second is our Supportive Services for Veteran Families program. And we have operated that program in North County, serving Lompoc, Santa Maria, Guadalupe, Buellton, all of Santa Barbara County. As well, we have a life skills parenting education program, which provides psychoeducational groups to community partners throughout South County. And we have a community mental health center, which has 35 counselors at the master's and doctoral level. And that program also is countywide now, thanks to a partnership developed prior to COVID with Zoom Telehealth and Cottage Hospital. And so what is safe parking? People think often of safe parking as a program for people who live in their vehicles and as an alternative lifestyle. And we really want to be clear that the focus and purpose of the program is to provide a safe place for people to go at night to park while they are looking to transition back into housing. The program has essentially 2 components, one which is an overnight shelter, and the other, which is what's called a rapid rehousing program, and that part of the program works to help people transition back into housing. When it was first started in 2004, a number of elected officials, Supervisor Susan Rose, Helene Schneider at the time, and local city advocates looked around and said, we have this issue where we have people who are, forced to live out of their vehicles with nowhere safe to go. And we have all of these empty parking lots, and why not repurpose the lots to address an existing community need? And that was the origin of the program. The program is actually a national model for safe parking communities throughout the country have replicated the program, especially throughout California, but throughout the country. Unfortunately, the number of people living in their vehicles is increasing. As of the last point in time count in January 2020, we determined that 51% of the unsheltered homeless population in Santa Barbara County were living in their vehicles. Currently, we have 26 lots, this is in South County, 26 lots, 156 spaces, sheltering at least 150 people each night. The way that we approach the program is that we distribute the impact. So we don't pack every parking lot with as many cars as we can get into the parking lot. We distribute it in a way that it has minimal impact and doesn't exceed the capacity of the area. Each of the cities have different ordinances, and I know that the city of Lompoc also has an ordinance that addresses this. And we've been in discussions with the city of Lompoc about how to address the ordinance. The lots are comprised of for-profit, nonprofit, a lot of faith-based, and city and county lots in Santa Barbara and Goleta. Every lot is insured. We have a very good insurance policy. Knock on wood, we haven't had to use it in 16 years. Each vehicle is licensed, registered, and insured. And on top of that, the agency has a policy, and we hold each of the, we indemnify each of the lot owners as well. And we do not pay for any of the lots. It wouldn't be affordable if we had to do that. So those are all given to us in kind. The current structure in South County is that people are allowed to come in after 7 p.m. and they have to leave by 7 a.m. There isn't a curfew, meaning that they can come in at any time during those hours. Many of our clients work and or have different reasons why they're in services, or they can't get in exactly at 7 o'clock. And oftentimes the curfews at some of the shelters make it difficult for them to be able to go to a shelter. They may have pets that they want to keep with them. They may have a family that they want to keep intact, and there isn't any way to get the family into a shelter. So it addresses a lot of different needs in that way. Each of the lots in South County has a different population. So there might be a family lot, there might be an RV lot, all women, mixed lots, so they vary, and that is typically based on the location of the lot and the ownership of the lot and what their interests are. We assign people to lots based on the kind of vehicle that they have. Again, if it's an RV lot, then they would be assigned to that lot, as well as if they work nearby, if they have children and their school is nearby, if they have doctor's appointments and they're nearby. So we try to locate people as close as we can to the services that they need, because gas actually is an expense that we try to keep as minimal as possible. We have our list is on a first come, first served basis. So if we have, for example, a family that comes in, the first family on the lot on the list would get into the first opening in a family lot, right? Or they could go into a mixed lot if they choose. We have a very long-standing structure in terms of how the program is operated. So it's for parking and sleeping only. People can't come and, put out their lawn chairs and, have their friends over and congregate. It is very specifically for somewhere for them to go to sleep and to have shelter at night. Depending on the lot, either it's a self-contained vehicle like an RV that doesn't require a restroom, or the facility has a restroom, or we install a porta potty. We have very clear guidelines about no trash dumping and pet waste, loud music, cooking. Generators is often something we have to address, where people might run a generator and the noise is an issue. So we have very strict guidelines around those types of issues. Any issues that come up with the lot has to be directly addressed with staff. No communication with the lot owner. It's very strictly a program that's operated by Safe Parking. And then in South County, we have guidelines where the vehicle can't, be in a lot at night and then pull outside and park on the street, right? They have to be at least 3 blocks away from the lot that they're assigned to. Each of our lots is monitored by a lot monitor outreach worker. And the way that that runs in South County right now is we have 2 lot monitors who rotate through all of the lots throughout the night, right? So they might do, they check at random times so as to, not be sort of like where people can say, oh, they're coming at 9 o'clock, we can have a party at 10 o'clock, right? So the times are random so that the supervision can be maintained. And we also do check in the morning so that we make sure that people are able to get out. Sometimes a vehicle might break down, or they might have a dead battery, or sometimes people oversleep. So our monitors make sure that people move along, by 7 a.m. Our monitors also provide support in ways if we have to communicate with them throughout the night, or if we have to make people aware of something en masse, or if we have issues around like fire and notifications like that, our monitors communicate in that way. They also provide light touch case management at night and address any emergencies that might arise. Again, in South County, we provide a monitoring report to the city every month. The city of Santa Barbara does actually contract with us and provide some funding for the program. And so we have a monitor log for every single lot. Every vehicle in the lot is noted. Any activity that happens in the lot is noted, and those reports are submitted to the city each month. Every vehicle has to renew their permit once a month, and at a minimum, review their housing plan once per month. The program is what's called a Housing First program, and HUD in general prefers that we not, mandate that somebody accept services in order to, receive shelter. So while we don't mandate that people, get X amount of case management services in order to receive shelter, we do work with them to, develop a housing plan and to transition them through as quickly as possible. We have a 24/7 emergency number. We have a very good relationship with law enforcement and the city and county staff that we work with down south. The program is staffed with a program manager, 3 case managers, 2 housing navigators, 2 housing retention specialists, and 3 lot monitor outreach workers. That's between the 2 different North and South County. And you can see we have a lot of people dedicated to helping people to navigate through the housing process as well as to stay housed. In South County, we have a daytime version of the program for oversized vehicles that came as a result of the oversized vehicle ordinance in Santa Barbara a couple of years ago. And actually, the mayor and the city council were very active in helping us create an ad hoc committee where we were able to secure daytime lots for the program and help find places for those who were impacted by that new ordinance. We very actively engage with landlords. You probably, hopefully, have seen one of our public service announcements running on the local networks, and we work with the county and County of Santa Barbara and the City of Santa Barbara housing authorities, as well as Partners in Housing Solutions and many private landlords, especially through our Supportive Services for Veteran Families program. We have established a lot of landlord relationships in North County already. And in Safe Parking, since the program's inception, I think we've actually housed over 1,000 people at this point. the total safe parking program, and that includes all the shelter and the rapid rehousing activities. And TFA stands for Temporary Financial Assistance. We will help people pay for security deposits, utility deposits, rental assistance, mechanical repairs, things like that. It'll vary from year to year depending on our funding. Right now, because of COVID and all of the CARES funding, we have had the good fortune, I guess, to have an additional amount of rental assistance, although we're probably going to need a lot more given the ongoing COVID situation. In general, and again, it changes a little bit from year to year, but the program is funded, well, let's break the program into two different categories, so shelter and rapid rehousing. One of the unique things about a safe parking program is that there is no model for safe parking according to HUD, right? So there's no, we're not a legitimate shelter, meaning we don't have walls and running water and plumbing and beds, right? So we don't qualify for shelter funding. So we have to piecemeal the funding for the program, and that's actually been one of the challenges for communities across the country, is to find a way to fund these types of programs. And so we've had a lot of experience over the years in trying to figure that out, and have become successful at doing that. And like I said, the shelter is funded through a combination of city contracts, as well as CDBG and human service funds, and then private foundation and unrestricted funding from private donors. And then our rapid rehousing, housing navigation, and housing retention side is funded by that myriad of government acronyms, which is comprised of state and federal and city and county funding. And in general, the program demographics are, as you see, overwhelmingly, most of our clients fall below 30% area median income. We're seeing an ongoing and increasing in the over 63 category. Unfortunately, we've been almost as high as 35% at times. We do see families, they tend to transition through a little bit more quickly, and about a third of the population is chronically homeless. Again, about 22% are employed, about 48% meet the definition of disability, and the population tends to be difficult from, let's say, the population you might find who are homeless on the street. They tend to be people who have been previously housed, sort of the working poor, who have had a perfect storm of misfortune, in that maybe they lost their job, they got divorced, they had a domestic violence situation. We see a lot of people who have overwhelming medical bills, and all of these things happen and cause them to fall out of housing. And they often are functional enough to be able to retain their car, their vehicle, and they think, okay, well, if I can just stay in my car for a little bit and get back on my feet, I can transition back into housing. They often are afraid of going to a traditional shelter, or for one of the reasons I mentioned earlier, are unable to get into a shelter. We also do street outreach to people who, we get calls constantly from people saying, oh, there's somebody sleeping in their car on my street, can you go, talk to them? So we do a lot of outreach like that. All of our staff are also trained on SOAR, which is an online process to help accelerate benefit acquisition. So staff work with people to find employment, find benefits if they don't have them already, and get connected to any and all community services that would help them to stabilize and transition back into housing. Employment does tend to be the most difficult thing to help people achieve. Oftentimes, especially with the over 63 category, it's hard to find people full-time employment that allows them to maintain their housing. So we're often either helping them to find subsidized housing, to rent rooms. Sometimes it's really all they can afford. Find a roommate, apply for vouchers, apply for senior housing. And we all live in California and we all live in this area, so we know how hard it is to come by that. So sometimes it takes a little bit longer than we would all like. We also are an integrated part of coordinated entry. I'm an inaugural member of the Continuum of Care Board. Our staff and myself sit on many committees and are very actively involved in all aspects of coordinated entry and everything that goes along with that. We provide all different types of case management. And again, this population is very specific and unique in that they have issues that come up that are sometimes very specific to living in a vehicle. And how do you help somebody, for example, transition from surgery and recuperating their car, right? So then what do you do with their car if they're recuperating from surgery and they have to go to assisted living or nursing facilities? Where do they shower? We have relationships with a lot of the local health clubs and YMCA and places like that where we will help people to get discounted memberships so that they can shower and go to work clean. We spend a lot of money each month on supplemental food. One of the things that we learned during COVID was that a lot of the food that is provided through normal sources is often food for people who can cook, right? So I learned a lot about non-perishable food and what helps people to have protein and fruit and things like that doesn't spoil while in a car. Each year we serve about 525 people. It varies from year to year, but that's a rough average. Last year was a little bit more because of the COVID food distribution. From March through July last year, we distributed food twice weekly. We spent over $100,000 just on the food distribution alone. And again, it varies a little bit. Typically, we house around 60 people annually throughout the program. We will, I think, most definitely probably exceed that number this year. Connect about 50 people to employment or increased employment, and about 45 to benefits. Again, we've really operated without any major incident, for the entire time of the program. The program has expanded in terms of staffing. Right now, it's very difficult actually to hire during COVID. So if anybody knows of anybody looking for a job, we're hiring. And of course, affordable housing is hard to come by in our county. And this is the first safe parking manual that was actually funded by the County of Santa Barbara and published by Sarah Miller McCune's Sage Publishing. And that it actually sells like hotcakes to people all throughout the country. And it's thought of as the best practice for safe parking programs, and we use that as a training manual. We're actually in the process now of doing our second edition, and we're working with a professor from USC and Berkeley in coordination with a study that's being done through the Hilton Foundation and looking at the efficacy and effectiveness of safe parking programs. And through that process, they're going to publish a lot of our outcomes as well as revise our manual for us, so that's exciting. And yeah, there's a lot of research behind the manual. And the income that we get from the manual actually goes to support the program. And, you know, throughout the years, we've had a ton of press and continue to have press. I think I've addressed that, but again, you know, there tends to be a little bit of a difference with this population. Again, think of, you know, quote unquote, the working poor. You know, we don't see as much addiction as you might see in other homeless populations. You know, you do see some mental health issues, but again, they tend to be higher functioning and able to transition more quickly. In terms of our North County expansion, we received a grant through the County of Santa Barbara last year. Unfortunately, it was right in the sort of at the height of the COVID outbreak, so it's taken a little bit longer than we would have liked to hire and set up an office and all of that, but we have established a new office in Vandenberg Village on Constellation, and that is an office that's shared for by both our Safe Parking and Supportive Services for Veteran Families program. And one day when we can all go out and about, again, we hope to invite people over and you know, be a little bit more you know, engaged with the community when we're allowed to do that. If you recall from the point in time count, the city of Lompoc actually has the third highest percentage of the vehicular homeless population residing in its city. We have started the program in terms of we've hired staff, and we are building relationships throughout the community. We have started working with some clients in terms of helping them to, you know, transition to housing, provide case management. All of that just started, so we haven't housed anybody yet, but we've started that process. The funding that we receive from the county is initial, so you know, we'll be looking for ways to continue to fund the expansion. You know, we're excited to, you know, to help the city of Lompoc address what we know, you know, is a challenging and, you know, critical need. You know, while we feel like we have integrated into North County through our veterans program, we know it's important to, you know, to educate everybody and to be open to feedback and to, you know, modifications to the way that we operate the program here, because every community is different. And so we've been really grateful about the feedback and support we've received from people that we've spoken to so far. And part of that process is you know, presenting to you all today and hearing what your concerns and feedback is. And you know, that it's critical for us to all work together for this to be successful. Some of our community partners include, you know, everybody there. You know, you know, very important to find people who feel comfortable, you know, opening up their lots to us as well. Relationships with landlords and property managers are essential, obviously, for us to be able to transition people back into housing. So if you're a landlord, please feel free to reach out. And here's a PSA. I'm not sure how to play that. How would I play that? Okay. Oh, there you go.
In New Beginnings, I know that I'm going to have a safe place to park my vehicle at night, that I'm not going to have to worry about getting tickets and the anxiety that comes with that. I'm a senior, and I'm on the housing waiting list with the city of Santa Barbara. This is not a vacation for me. This is a holding place until that housing comes through.
Living in your vehicle provides a quality of life that is substandard. The shortage of available, affordable housing in our community is absolutely devastating.
These people have helped me tremendously to take care of my life, which was starting to fall apart, and I'm very glad that I got involved with them when I did. And I think they'll do the same for you too, because that's just the way they are. If you're thinking about going to New Beginnings, you should know that if you do, you won't feel alone about it. You will find like you have some shelter in this world instead of somebody looking over your shoulder trying to figure out what you're doing. It gives you a feeling of safety, and they're good people to deal with. If you got any questions, give them a call. They'll give you some answers, and that's what it starts to take to make everything work.
That's one of our longtime clients who we successfully housed, and he had brought to our attention that it would be really important to do a PSA from the perspective of a client so that other clients, other people feel comfortable coming to us. So that is one in a series of probably about half a dozen PSAs that we have running, geared towards landlords, geared towards lot owners, and towards clients. And I think that's it. So I'm happy to, again, I really appreciate you all, inviting us to chat today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Your program is sort of the one to hold gold standard to, based on the research I've done, and so I appreciate that you have decided to grow into North County in more than just the veteran services. In looking at our ordinance, I'm sure there are some things that we wrote in based on if we were managing it that might need to be changed, so it would be really helpful to understand where, if we chose you as our partner to deliver on our ordinance, that we need to make some changes. The second part for me is you've received some funding. There is a lot of funding out there, and you're right, there are limitations every time you turn around as to who qualifies and how you qualify, but that there is funding out there right now that could potentially get a program up and running so that it would give us time to look at sustainable funding for the program long term. And then finally, the last part of my query is, how have you been received with some of those potential partners you've been reaching out to? Do you find they're willing to have the conversation with you? Do you find they're interested in partnering with you because of the program you already run? Is it something our local partners that we had started a discussion with, but it's now been nearly 3 years since we had that discussion. So I'm curious, because I know what the impact is causing on our community with the RVs on our streets that are living on the streets, and not just on those neighborhoods, but on those individuals in that environment. So it is something that I personally am eager to move forward from just having an ordinance to actually having the program, and would like to hear from you what you think would need to change in order for you to consider us as a partner.
Sure. So I'll address the conditional, or the first issue, which is I think touches on the conditional use permit aspect of the ordinance that might serve as a barrier. And we're in the process of talking about that right now, so I can't get into that much detail as to what I think the solution is. But essentially, any barrier that prevents us from being able to operate the program in a lot is a barrier that can serve to make it not happen. In the city of Santa Barbara, for example, it's the ordinance is written in a way that allows us to be in a lot, operate the program, and have accountability and responsibility for that, but we don't have to pay for the for the privilege of being there, and we don't have to incur the expense of a conditional use permit. The city of Goleta, the ordinance is a little bit different, where the actual lot owner has to apply to be able to have the program in the city, but again, there's a nominal, if no cost. So the cost aspect is something that can be really prohibitive, because we just don't have that money. So that would make it impossible. So as we continue to look at that aspect of it, I appreciate city staff has been really helpful, and I would be happy to come back to the city council with more concrete information with regards to that. In terms of funding, again, it's always been a very complicated program to fund. The County of Santa Barbara provided us funding through HEAP cash funding, and a chunk of that, more than half of that, expires on June 30th. The funding is for 3 years, so we then have sort of a decreasing amount over the next 2 years. So, my job is to find more money. And there are different ways to go about that. Things are rapidly changing in terms of, COVID funding, as well as state of California funding. As well, at the federal level, before COVID started, federal partners were just beginning to say, hey, we need to look at how to do safe parking. And then COVID happened. I could bore you, with a really long history of how hard it is to get the federal government to make a change that would allow for safe parking shelters to be funded through federal money. So we're probably looking at state money, and I think that that's a more realistic option in the short term. The dollars tend to be more flexible. And then, again, a little bit of contribution at the city and county level is helpful, as well as private funding. So it's a puzzle. And then, what was the third question? I'm sorry.
How receptive have been potential partners?
That's right. Yeah, we've been so delighted, actually, by everybody we've spoken to so far has been very receptive, especially at the city level. The county obviously is very much in support of the program because they funded it, and they've been very helpful in general. In terms of lot owners, people are interested, and we're also hearing, quite frankly, that they want to see the city support the program, not necessarily financially, but to get behind the program before they're willing to dip their toe into it. We have a couple of locations that we're hopeful might be able to work in the short term. But, there hasn't been anybody who's said, oh gosh, no, we don't want to do that.
Okay. Councilmember Ball.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for coming and making this presentation. This is an issue and a need that we've been discussing in our community for some time. This doesn't solve every issue in this context, but this does go quite a long way. So I'm hopeful that we find some collaborative, creative way to make this happen. In as much as I would, if we can get closer to the finish line, you have my commitment, at least within my district, to continue to help, connect the dots with people that may have spaces and options to help in this as far as parking. Something I found really interesting, and one of the slides mentioned, is I think it said 60% was between the ages of 55 and 62, and another additional 24% were 63 or older. So 84% of these, is that what I'm reading? 80+% of this is 55 or older. I had no idea.
We have had people well into their 80s and into their 90s in the program. And quite frankly, it's just heartbreaking to see people who have worked their entire life and lived their entire life here. And, maybe they've been in a rental where they had really inexpensive rent for decades, and then, the property sold, or they want to move their grandparents in, or for some reason, they get, asked to leave, or one of the spouses, one of the people die, right? And they lose a chunk of their income. And then they find themselves at 80 or, 80 something, having to pay, $1,800 a month for, a one-bedroom apartment. And, it's really hard to find a job for an 83-year-old, So it's terrible. It really is. And there's no, there's no easy remedy. So, it's about trying to, pull all of our resources together as quickly as we can. And again, you're looking at, room share, subsidized housing, senior housing, like that. And, people especially people who have never been homeless before. They don't really consider themselves homeless and are terrified to go to shelters. They stay in their car.
Thank you for that. I think ultimately, it's really tough. It all comes down to paying for it, sustaining it. I'm hopeful. I think one measurement of any successful community, rich or poor, is ultimately measured partly by how we treat the most vulnerable. So there is a need here. I'm hopeful that we can be creative and figure out a way to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but and let me add one thing too. It's think about it this way also, is that you have people who are vulnerable living out of their vehicles, right? So either they're going to go somewhere, and it'd be nice to say, well, they should go elsewhere, but especially for people who are from here, who have jobs here, who have doctors here, they don't want to move, and it's understandable. And so it's better and safer for a community to have a place where people can go, where they have connection to community, meeting other parkers, and they have people who are checking on them through the monitoring, right? As opposed to them having to park on a side street, in the dark. Because if there's somebody who's looking to prey upon people who are vulnerable, they're going to prey upon the people who are alone, right? They're not going to come into a monitored, protected area where people are together. And, that the program has proven that out.
Councilmember Cordova.
I don't really have a question, but thank you. I just want to address our staff and obviously us as council, and I just want to say I'm really excited to hear this because I think it's definitely something that we've talked about and is very much needed in our community. I think creating that opportunity, like we said, for those that are part of that vulnerable community that are transitioning or in that process. And I think backed by proper ordinance that helps to eliminate the nuisance and help clean up, because there's so many residents that reach out on a regular basis and talk about, some of the issues that come about with those that aren't necessarily seeking help, but are just being a nuisance and don't want to abide by certain services, laws, regulations, whatever. So I think that's very important as we look at this and as we move forward. Also, the solution of how do we also piggyback some ordinances that can help the community really clean up some of our streets and help our residents also that are paying or that are a homeowner that have somebody that comes and parks in front of their lawn or dumps waste into their bushes or whatever the case is. Everything that we hear, all the horror stories that we hear. So I think this is a great opportunity, and I'm excited to move the conversation forward as well and see what happens with it.
Thank you for your presentation. I will default to staff on if you need a request from us or if you plan to bring this back already.
Excuse me, the plan was to bring this back already.
Okay.
So Christy and her group are working on that now.
Great, and to take into consideration what Councilmember Cordova has said, is any other impacts that we can look as a larger program to address that are happening?
We have done that, and I think it will make a big difference in the city. This is sort of the starting piece of it, and then we have to continue with all the other parts to it. I have already talked with the city attorney about how do we adjust ordinances and other pieces to keep this moving forward.
Great, thank you. Thank you so very much, and thank you, and welcome to Lompoc.
Thank you again.
Thank you. All right, city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. A short one tonight. One of them you already mentioned, but I'm going to reiterate that, and that our update on the streaming system is complete. We are up and running. The new equipment and software had been installed last week, and it tested properly. So as of tonight, we're back online. So no more little Zoom that nobody could hear. So that was very good. The other one is it was a council request a couple meetings ago that for each meeting to give an update on the current state of the public health order. And the current county health order is in place until January 21st, but what we have been informed, I guess you could say, is that the health order would again be extended due to the high outbreak of the COVID virus that's recently hit the county. We've hit record levels recently. City of Lompoc, just a couple days ago, we had 80 new cases. We were trending, a few months back, we were at 4 and 5. We're up to 80. So what that means with the health order being continued is that the commissions and committee meetings would still need to be on hold for February, but each meeting I'm going to be updating with any new information to see if we can get those opened again. And that was it.
Any questions for the city manager? Thank you. The next agenda item is our consent calendar. The public comment on consent calendar can be 3 minutes. On any item on consent calendar, to comment, call 805-875-8201, 805-875-8201, and remember to mute your TV, radio, or PC. Madam Clerk, did we have any written comments on consent calendar?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. While we wait to see if there are any calls at 805-875-8201, the consent calendar is considered to be routine and will be enacted after one motion in the form listed below. There will be no separate discussions of these items unless good cause is shown prior to council vote. Any items withdrawn from the consent calendar for separate discussion will be addressed immediately before the second oral communications near the end of the meeting. So again, public comment on the consent calendar items is open. 805-875-8201, 805-875-8201, and remember to mute your radio, TV, or PC. Eight 875-875-8201 is the number to call for public comment on consent calendar items. Seeing no one call, we will close public comment on consent calendar items. As a reminder to council, you're welcome to ask clarifying questions if there isn't an item that you want full discussion on. Is there an item you'd like to pull? Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, I'd like to pull item 4.
Okay. Any others?
I'm not sure if this is appropriate or not, but I don't really necessarily have some questions, but I guess I could say it's a question. On items 2 and 3, those are just talking about some grants. Would it be possible to get a couple highlights from those grants and what those look like?
Yes. I think a brief overview of them is within this period, if you don't want a full discussion.
Thank you.
We'll hand it to staff.
So item number 2 is the Prop 64 Public Health and Safety Grant. I'm going to come up there.
Hello, you reached the Lompoc City Council meeting. Are you looking to leave public comment?
Imagine that. Juggling?
We should be used to it around here. I'm Christy Allercon, Community Development Director, Mayor and Council. So we're excited to be applying for the Prop 64 Public Health and Safety Grant. That has a youth education and intervention program. It's about $1 million that we're going to be seeking. So we're looking to apply for both the education recreation piece as well as funding an officer and then some outreach efforts and whole big program. I don't have the detailed written program yet. It's due January 29th, so this was thrown together really quickly so we could get it to you for approval.
And then item 3.
And that is a planning grant that's going to assist us to pay for our housing element update. It's an entitlement grant, so we expect to receive that, no problems.
Great. Any additional question? Okay. Seeing no additional requests for items move, I'll entertain a motion to remove item 4, but accept the rest of consent calendar.
I'll give you a second.
You give me a motion?
Your motion. Yes.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept consent calendar except for item 4, which will be moved to the end. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes 5-0. All right. Okay. There are no staff presentation announcements or requests on the agenda, so we will open the floor for the general oral communications on city matters. You have 3 minutes to speak to items that are not on the agenda that are city matter. 805-875-8201, 805-875-8201, and remember to mute your TV, PC, or radio. Madam Clerk, did we have any generalized written oral communications?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. So the number to call is 805-875-8201, and remember to mute your TV, PC, or radio to avoid feedback. We're working on technical difficulties.
Hello, you're live in the Lompoc City Council meeting. You have 3 minutes to provide public comment. Good evening, are you there?
Hello?
Go ahead, please.
Hi, Mayor Osborne and members of the council. Can you indicate that you can hear me since I've muted my computer? Can somebody give me a thumbs up?
We can hear you. Thumbs up.
Okay, thank you. That's good enough. So this is Lee Heller. I've been in front of you before to speak regarding animal services, although it's been a little while. And I want to remind you also that I'm one of the largest donors to the remodel of the Lompoc shelter. So I have a pretty strong vested interest. Oh, I saw the thumbs up. I have a pretty strong vested interest in making sure that animal services serves Lompoc and the region well. I've been fostering animals for your area for many years as well and adopted my own animals from that shelter. And I'm going to ask you to reconsider, and I think it was Councilmember Starbuck who said this, that this isn't about providing fewer or less services to Lompoc, but about providing smart and different services. So I'm going to be paying attention, and I'm going to be advocating aggressively to ensure that Animal Services is doing its best for all of the communities in our county, including Lompoc. And I want to ask you to keep an open mind moving forward and not make the assumption that what you heard tonight was that you'll be getting less. Really, things are changing rapidly in the world of sheltering. We don't know what will happen when the pandemic is over, but we are anticipating a change that will be better for the community, for people, and for animals. I also heard the mayor's concerns about those people who don't use the internet or have the same technological access, and that is something we do need to push hard on to ensure that community members, regardless of their technological capabilities, are being served. So I'm going to be paying attention, I promise you, and pushing hard. I will be reaching out to you, and what I ask for you to do in return is to keep an open mind and keep in communications with Animal Services about what your city needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The number to call is 805-875-8201, and remember to mute your TV, PC, or radio.
Good evening, you're live in the Lompoc City Council meeting. You have 3 minutes to provide public comment. Please mute your TV in the background.
Yeah, when it happens, yeah.
When your call is put through, please be muted, otherwise we get feedback. and it's difficult to hear you. So the number to call is 805-875-8201. And when you're told you're live and on the air, you are live and on the air.
Good evening. You're live in the Lompoc City Council meeting. You have 3 minutes to provide public comment.
Yes, I was going to comment on the RV thing here in Lompoc. Can I tell you a little story real quick? Okay. I've been living in an RV for the past 4 years because my trailer burnt down behind the high school. Okay. And I had to live in my RV. So a lady recently hired me to do security at her storage unit because she saw my RV on the street and she knew who I was. So I did the security for her, and my RV got damaged so bad by just people who wanted to do damage to it for no other reason that I had to destroy that RV and buy another RV. And then recently, I left that storage unit that I was doing security for, and I've been living on N Street, and you know what happened on N Street last night? There was a shooting, okay? And now I have a problem with, where am I going to park my RV and not get it damaged or get it broken into or be safe? That's the problem I have, and these people sound like they're pretty real about what they're going to do, and it's all up to the city council to accept it. And there's so many people around Lompoc that don't have a place to park, like myself, because of situations like myself, where my trailer burnt down, and I've been having to live in this RV. You think I want to live in this RV? I have epilepsy. I live on my Social Security disability check, and my wife doesn't work because she had cancer. And legally, I guess when they mark your tires, we have to move it 3 feet. But I don't know what the situation is. If somebody keeps on complaining about it, you got to move it somewhere else. But it's just an ongoing thing that the police don't really want to get hassled with. We don't want to get hassled with. And we need a place that's safe in Lompoc. And there's plenty of spaces out there in Lompoc where they can make something like that into an RV park where they could park, in cars too. I mean, we were parked before up there by Aviation Road, and we all got thrown out of there, and then I had to go park elsewhere. And now I've been living in this area for the last 3 years, and I know all the amigos and other people that are in the street, and but I still get people peeping into my RV. People peeping into my RV and getting it damaged and having problems like that.
Time's up.
Thank you, City Council.
Thank you.
Good evening. You're live in the Lompoc City Council meeting. You have 3 minutes to provide public comment.
Hello. Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of City Council. My name is Jill Anderson, and I'm the co-founder of a nonprofit called Shadows Fund. We are an animal sanctuary and dog rescue based just outside of Lompoc on Miguelito Canyon. And we've been working with County Animal Services for over 10 years as a partner and working primarily within the community of Lompoc to help pets and pet owners. And I just wanted to call in to lend our support to County Animal Services and the new vision that they presented today that we think is an incredible opportunity. Moving towards a more community-based sheltering model is happening around the country and offers not simply an increase in services, but a more effective model of helping homeless animals and communities and the people who care for them. I think that I also heard Council Member Starbuck mention that Lompoc would be getting less for the same price. And as someone who's worked with animal services and understands all the things that they provide, I don't see this as less. In fact, I see it as more. With the focus and the resources and the energy being placed on services, on partnerships, on creative programs, and on the community, we are going to see a real result from that kind of work versus focusing those resources on a dilapidated building that is simply housing animals and not housing them very humanely. All of the services that the public would go to that brick and mortar to receive can be used and received in many other ways, as Angela Walters described. And, I think that getting the word out to members of the community in ways that aren't simply online, via vets, via our community partners, in social media and businesses around town to let folks know about the various services they can take advantage of through these adoption partners is something that we will see improvement on when we're focusing on a community-based sheltering model as opposed to just your traditional and now fairly outdated model of animal sheltering. So I just want to say we view this as an opportunity to improve what's happening in Lompoc and to mirror what's happening around the country and the direction that animal services and animal sheltering is moving in.
Thank you.
Good evening. You're live in the Lompoc City Council meeting. You have 3 minutes to provide public comment.
Yes. Go back.
Go ahead, please. And please turn off your TV in the background.
Yes, when it comes time, yes, I will.
You're live right now in the City Council meeting.
No, there's a woman speaking right now about animal services.
I think
as soon as
there's a little bit
as
of a
soon
delay.
as
There's a delay, so go ahead. You're live now. There's a little bit of a delay on the TV.
okay, no problem.
So go ahead.
I muted my
Thank you.
I muted my TV.
Go ahead and speak now, please.
Good evening. I'm not sure that I'm being heard by the council.
The council's giving thumbs up. They can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Well, but they're listening to someone else. This is not working. If I can't speak with them, I'm not going to. Someone else is talking.
There's a delay on the TV.
By how
You
long?
paused it. Go ahead, please. Just speak.
So for those of you who are new to this, we have a delay that's required by the Federal Communication Commission. So when you call in and we answer the phone, we have a staff member who answers and tells you that you are now speaking to us. And the reason we ask for you to mute your TV is because of that delay. It causes an echo. So please trust our staff when they say you are now live despite what you may be seeing or hearing in your streaming because of the delay that happens to prevent some things from being transmitted in case you potentially say a word that's not allowed. So I appreciate your concern, but you are making it through and you can be heard. I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and move on to the rest of our agenda. There is another opportunity at the end of the meeting to call in, and you're more than welcome to do so. So, We will move on to appointments. Item number 8, we have appointments for the Planning Commission and the Youth Commission. The Planning Commission currently has openings for Councilmember Ball, Vega, and Cordova. And currently, as it states on the agenda, those terms end 3/15/2021. But if you are appointed tonight and plan to serve again, just resubmit your application in order for that next round of appointments. So we have one applicant. It is for District 4, and I believe that is Councilmember Ball. So you have the floor to make a nomination for your appointment.
Sure. I wanted to, I'm very excited to nominate a local hero, a former restaurant owner, and a good person for our town, Augusto Quadrillo, for the Planning Commission.
Thank you. I need a second. I'll give you a second. Any questions or concerns? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes 5-0. Augusto, welcome to the Planning Commission. We also have an application for the Youth Commission. There is one associate term ending 1/2023 and 3 associate terms ending 1/2022. We have one applicant, Matthew Gordon, who is a student. Councilmember Cordova.
I'll go ahead and nominate Matthew Gordon to go ahead and serve to the Youth Commission, and I thank him for submitting his application and for doing so.
Do you suggest him for the term expiring 1/2023 or 1/2022?
I guess we could do the 2023.
He is. He is young enough to serve.
There you go.
Through 2023. So I need a second for that.
I'll give him a second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or concerns? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes 5-0. Welcome, Matthew, to the Youth Commission. Thank you so very much. Our next business item is number 9. It's adoption of resolution number 6379(21), accepting grant award from the Department of Defense Office of Economic Adjustment Military Installation Sustainability Program, approving amendment number 3 to agreement with Bridgeview Resources authorizing $1,364,930 in additional compensation for grant task activities, affirming the city manager's authority to execute grant documents, and approving budget amendments and appropriations for such revenues and expenditures. And we have our Senior Administrative Analyst, Jasmine McGinty, to make the presentation.
Good evening, members, Mayor and members of the Council. Jasmine McGinty, Senior Administrative Analyst in the City Manager's Office. So that was a lot to speak, but tonight I am asking the City Council to adopt resolution number 637921, and that does quite a number of things here tonight, but primarily it will accept the Military Installation Sustainability Grant Award by the Department of Defense's Office of Economic Adjustment, which was actually recently changed to the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation, with the acronym OLDCC. So that was recently changed, but formerly known as the OEA. And I'm also asking the Council to affirm the City Manager's authority to execute any and all necessary grant documents should we get awarded this grant by the OEA. For purposes of tonight's meeting, I'm just going to say OEA, but it is old CC as well. Also asking to approve us to use Bridgeview Resources as the sole provider for the grant task activities, as they'll be the primary grant management of the grant should we get awarded the grant as well. And approving the amendment to the agreement with Bridgeview, also, as well as approving new organization codes related to budget appropriations for the grant. So just a little bit of background. The Vandenberg Air Force Base is in close proximity to us and is a huge driver for the city's economy. So we're just looking to improve our partnerships with the base through this opportunity of a grant. I'm not sure if many people know, but Vandenberg Air Force Base is poised to significantly expand in a commercial sector and defense-based capabilities in the coming years. So with that expansion, hopefully there will also be expansion towards the city, and building a partnership with the base is just something that we we look to do, and hopefully this grant opportunity would be one way to facilitate that. So a little bit of background on Bridgeview Resources. We have been using them for different other contracts in the city for a number of different activities, and we would like to explore joint opportunities with them. So from the initial review, sorry, I'm trying to, can I take this off? Thank you, sorry.
Maybe you step outside that door to have that conversation because it's reflecting up on us and we can hear both, unfortunately. Thank you. All right, Ms. McGinty.
Sorry, and I removed my mask, so hopefully I can be a little bit more clear. So for the initial review, we contracted with Bridgeview Resources to prepare the grant application back in 2020, and we submitted the initial grant application to the Department of Defense on December 4th. So from that initial review, we've been working with Bridgeview, getting feedback from them, having meetings to see kind of where we are with the potential grant award. So the original briefing to the head of the Department of Defense was scheduled to be December 18th, and from that we were going to get some feedback on how we should improve our application to get the final award, hopefully. With the holidays and with COVID, that has been postponed a little bit. It was postponed twice, actually, once to December 22nd and again till after January 20th of this year. So we finally got the date of that briefing where it's going to go for its final review, and that's going to be January 28th. So from that, hopefully we can get the feedback and submit the final award. So that's a little bit about Bridgeview and where we stand with that. But OEA is expected to approve the grant application that we brought forth, contingent upon the City Council's acceptance of the grant and affirmation of the city manager's authority to execute that grant award. The grant award amount is $1,516,460, about $1.5 million. I'm just going to say that. So, and we are expected to receive that amount hopefully after the 28th once we go through that final briefing. There is a non-federal Lompoc matching fund that is required, so that's 10%, which is in the amount of $151,000 roughly, comprised, and there's a little breakdown in the staff report. About $58,000 of it is city internal costs, which goes mostly towards salaries, benefits. There's a $6,000 in travel costs for a couple different conferences related to that grant. And then we are also expected to pay approximately $92,000 in non-federal matching funds to Bridgeview Resources. And their task mainly in the grant is to do the grant management, which also includes reports regarding the grant. So the fiscal impact to the city, the award is expected to be for about $1.5 million, and we are scheduled to get around that. It's not going to significantly change much, should there be any major hiccups, which there shouldn't be. And then we do have the local share requirement, which I mentioned earlier. The grant itself is going to be for a study, and that study is going to kind of look at different infrastructure to marry, the relationship between the base and the city. So in the breakdown here, the fiscal impact, there's different funds where the local, federal, non-matching share will be allocated to, and it's mainly utilities that we're looking at here in the study, so water, wastewater, solid waste, transportation, general fund. And so the breakdown is in that as well. Approximately $32,000 from water, $32,000 from electric, $38,000 from wastewater, $10,000 from solid waste, about $7,000 from the general fund, $32,000 to the transportation fund to meet that $151,000 city matching 10% that we have to come up with there. So another thing that I'm asking tonight is, to facilitate the effective management of this grant, we are asking to consolidate a new grant administration program to allocate those resources to be under the city manager's office program. So that's also part of this. So in conclusion, with the completion of the task outlined in the grant application, which we submitted on the December 4th, to do this study, which is going to be comprised of two different parts, and that's going to be a compatible use study and a mission installation resilience study, again, to look at different infrastructure and different things that we can approach that's kind of going to help with the expansion of the base. It's going to be a great thing for the city should we get awarded it, and we are on track to get awarded it. Hopefully we'll know more after January 28th. So with that, in a nutshell, I am open for any questions or more specifics about the actual grant.
Mayor, if I may, before you turn it over, if I can, I just wanted to give a little shout out to Jasmine. She's taken this project on hook, line, and sinker, done a very good job. It's a lot of going back. That's why we know we're 99.99% sure we'll get this grant to start all the studies. A lot of going back and forth with the DOD, which was the Office of Economic Adjustment, or formerly was that. Working with our consultant who's done these in other areas. In fact, they're the ones that sort of brought this opportunity to us. The other one I want to do is just point out that this is a fabulous, during our original presentation when this all started, this has implications to help the city for 20 plus years. I mean, it's incredible what we can get out of this. You know, one example, as we go through the studies, we'll look at all these different items, but a couple highlights we'll say. One of the things for possible redundancy, that's what the feds want us to look at, is being redundant and resilient for the base. You know, only for base towns can put in for these. So one of the things we could look at doing is supplying them as being the electric supplier. You know, they would pay us instead of PG&E. And in order to do the resiliency and the redundancy part, is one example when we do this study is to look at bringing another power line up from Southern California Edison. So right now we're always relying on PG&E to transfer our power. Right today and this week we've had the PSPS, are we going to have a shutdown? Are we not going to have a shutdown? If it did shut down on PG&E side, having that ability to bring a line of power all the way from the Goleta area up to Lompoc, we can go over and flip the switch. Nobody's out of power, the base isn't out of power, we keep operating as it is. It's something we don't have right now. Staying with electric, another one is we don't have a backup system for delivery to our city. It would be very, very beneficial to us to have that. That would be that redundancy factor for the base if we become the supplier for the electric. So we could have another grant that we would do the study on that would show that having a separate secondary receiving station, maybe with one transformer rather than 3 or 4 that are in the mains transformer. So if something happened at that particular receiving station, we just flip the switch, move over there. We're also looking at, you know, road projects. One of the things the base actually wanted to see was the Central Avenue Bridge put in, because now with all of the rocket launches that are supposed to be taking place, as well as the increase in security that they're going to be looking into now that they're going to be Space Force, one of the road transportation studies that we can look at is the Central Avenue Bridge. These aren't little $1 million grants. This is $1.5 million is just for the study. We're talking when we're done, these could be 25, 35, 100 million. One of the bases back east was given a $250 million grant for all the road maintenance on base as well as around the base, which means the city. So anything leading into the city. So they're doing it, again, just for base cities, and that's what we are. We literally share a fence line with the base. So I'm just excited because this could be 20 years. We can keep coming back and saying, now we have another grant for something else that's really one, you know, broadband, water, sewer, something else. So as this goes forward, it's going to be, what did we say, about 18 months. Once we get the grant and then doing the studies, we'll get it all back, compile it, and then look at going for the really big project. So I'm just excited. I just wanted to give a shout out to Jasmine and the crew at BVR, as we say. And that was it. Thank you.
So in a nutshell, this is the grant to do the studies to show what projects we would then qualify in partnership with the base for federal dollars to make infrastructure improvements, both for the base and in connection with our community as a base city.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah. Jasmine, this is a pretty big report, so I just, one of the questions I have is the general fund's matching this with $7,535. It's listed as housing resources. What are we going to look at in this? Is this going to do our arena numbers, part of our general plan update? What is the end use of this grant study on the housing part of it?
I'm going to refer to Dean to that one.
Oh. Well, it's really on this piece, it's not necessarily the arena numbers, it's looking at what is the base need in housing right now. So that entail then ties into what do we need as housing in the city. So it's always saying what is the base need and how do we supply on that one. So the study is going to look at right now, there's 999 homes on the base. As they expand, they're going to be bringing in possibly another 10,000 jobs on base. There's going to be a need for additional homes. So that one little piece of the $7,000, that's part of our contribution to the bigger study that will go on of what's necessary for bases, to how much more housing do they need.
Would this have some type of an influence then later on sphere of influences and types of things? If the base needs, it would help us?
It would help us on our sphere of influence, meaning what do we need, in our boundary limits, what we need to do to supply that. So for us, it would also then be going to LAFCO and saying, okay, here's RENA, but here's also what the base is needing too. So it would add to what we need.
It's another arrow in the quiver, so to speak. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cordova.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty in the study, is being able to identify what those needs are for the expansion of Vandenberg Air Force Base, and of course how that works into our community, how that affects our community, and how that can help grow our community and be able to bring in some of the much needed infrastructure issues, or components, I should say, that we are currently lacking right now, and we could piggyback off that and create a much stronger, again, resilient community that can help support the base and their expansion. I just want to clarify, are we working collaboratively with Vandenberg Air Force Base to identify these needs, or is this just a list of needs that we've come up with and,
Do you want me to take that, or do you want to do it?
Well, I mean, thus far, we have worked with Vandenberg Air Force Base in the initial parts of this. We had meetings separate with Bridgeview, and Bridgeview had separate meetings with Vandenberg Air Force Base, and they asked Vandenberg Air Force Base what their needs and priorities were, and then they asked us as well, and then they kind of molded those two together.
So we continue going forward on this. So Bridgeview's in contact with the base. They're sort of our go-between at the moment because it's the two of us trying to work on it. And no, the base has been very open. I've been talking with Colonel Hunsberger about things that the city can do to relieve them of non-mission critical items, from wastewater to water to anything else. So we'll continue these outreach meetings, and that's how I know, like with the bridge, that's one of their big ones, was transportation needs to be improved. So that one came up. Electricity, they said, was a big one, because if they go down, they do have a lot of generators, but they don't want to rely on the generator. So that's how we sort of figured out what's critical to them, is by talking to them, and we'll continue that process.
I agree, and I support the consultant and their efforts, and the fact that we're using the consultant who has that mass knowledge. But I still think at this juncture, the city of Lompoc needs to have a direct communication with Vandenberg Air Force Base, and direct communication to figure out what the needs are, and work collaboratively with them. So just keep that in mind. I don't want there to be, for us, a consultant in between. Yes, there needs to be, but we also need to have that direct relationship with Vandenberg, and I think that is definitely possible. That is something that is already there, and we need to continue to maintain that.
Councilmember Ball.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with our need to, continue to make direct relationship. We have that already, but in this context, to tighten up that direct communication so that there's no nuance or little things that slip through the cracks, and we go forward on something, but we don't understand the immediate necessary localized need sometimes. So any way we can benefit that. I personally am incredibly excited about this. I know some people say, well, gosh, that seems like it's a grant, a lot of money, but it just pays for a study. I just have to share this story. I was 6 or 7 years old on O Street going to school at the church school when the Challenger blew up. My dad helped build Slick 6. He's a carpenter. We've been waiting for decades to have some sort of relationship and some sort of positive economic impact from our proximity to the base, and it's been many years coming. Now, I know this doesn't guarantee anything very specific, but this is the most exciting thing I've heard in a long time that might help us change the conversation about how disconnected we have been from the base. So I'm excited to learn as much about this as possible, and you have my support, and I'm hopeful that Lompoc can support this as well.
No, I do appreciate that. The other one this study is helping with is the REACH group. I think we've all heard of the REACH. It's the Regional Economic, I can't remember the rest of the acronym. Jasmine and I just sat on a call with Dr., I can't remember his last name, is Cyrus. He's the economics professor up at SLO, or Cal Poly. And he was very interested to know what we're doing because they intend to take what we're doing and add it to their own. They're doing an OEA grant also. And so they're going to use ours as the basis to also add to theirs as what kind of economic output it's going to be. So we're sort of getting 2 for 1 here. And that's going to be a regional wide. Ours focuses on the infrastructure, the absolute necessary pieces. They're going to focus on more of the economic needs of the base. So it's a double shot we're getting here.
Any more questions for staff before we open it for public comment? Seeing none, we'll open the floor for public comment on item number 9. The number to call is 805-875-8201. Remember to mute your TV, PC, or radio. The number to call is 805-875-8201. And when the phone line is answered the second time, and our lovely staff member says, "You are now live and speaking with council. You have 3 minutes. You are speaking to us." Were there any written comments for item 9?
No, ma'am.
Thank you, Stacy. Again, the number to call is 805-875-8201, and this is public comment for item number 9. Seeing no one call in, we will close public comment and bring it back to council. Councilmember Starbuck.
Well, I was going to suggest we annex Vandenberg, but we'll leave that for later, so I'll go ahead and move staff recommendations.
I would suggest we encourage that be a result of the study somehow.
Second.
And Councilmember Cordova seconds that. Any additional questions or concerns? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes unanimously 5-0. Thank you so very much for moving forward on this, and we look forward to that. Results.
Thank you.
Item number 10 is a request by the Lompoc Valley Chamber of Commerce for adoption of a resolution number 638021, calling upon the state for adjustments to the state regional stay-at-home order, data to justify regional order restrictions, and consultation and cooperation with local jurisdictions and business representatives. And I forwarded this request from the chamber on to our city attorney and city manager as a request for us to support this from our Chamber of Commerce. It is currently moving through our other cities and county, and any feedback from our legal counsel.
I have no comments on this, Mayor.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure before we open the floor for discussion, any questions on this item or concerns you would like to ask of the staff?
I have a quick question.
Councilmember Ball.
Is there any verbiage in here that goes way outside of the initial letter that we sent a couple of weeks ago, basically asking for the same thing, or? I'm sorry, I'm talking city manager. City attorney, Jeff, sorry.
Are you saying the difference between the letter that we sent as a council asking for our own region versus this?
Ultimately, because we're being asked to approve something that has similar language. I just wanted to know, is there something way outside of,
It is similar. I mean, the one was dedicated to pulling us out of the larger Southern California region. I think this one, I don't know, I'm trying to paraphrase it, it's just saying, some of the ideas and ideals that they're having us follow or the thoughts aren't, necessarily, in their words, accurate, but, it's other cities or chambers have asked their cities to do it also.
So I think you're right. The major difference is the initial letter that we signed on to was just asking us to be our own region as a tri-county region. This is a list of concerns that the Chamber of Commerce's across the Santa Barbara County region have identified as concerns that they would like a unified voice to go to the state legislature and the governor to consider as they move forward in 2021. I think the only, and I did ask the city attorney about this, the only phrase that is a little, for me, uncomfortable is the, unfortunately, without any specific evidence that the imposed restrictions have had hoped for positive measurable outcomes. I think what they're asking for is that they would like to see more specific evidence for why the imposed restrictions exist and what positive measurable outcomes could be. It's a strange phrasing, so it could be rephrased slightly to reflect more of what I think they might be intending, because again, this is new virus. We don't know what it are. It's very difficult to have the science until something occurs, and every time something occurs, it adjusts each time, especially given the new mutations that we're seeing. So again, saying that there's no specific evidence, well, the evidence is occurring as we go through this pandemic. So it's an awkward sentence, so that would be the only one I'd probably want to rephrase slightly, but other than that, I really don't have a problem calling attention to the issues that we as a community and as a county are experiencing and supporting the chamber in its appeal to be more thoughtful. Any other input before we open to public comment? Seeing none, we'll open the floor for public comment on item 10. The number to call is 805-875-8201, 805-875-8201. Remember to mute your TV, radio, or PC. And when the call is answered for the second time and you are told you are live and speaking to council for 3 minutes, you are speaking to us. Were there any written communications on this item?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Seeing no one call, we will close public comment on this item and bring it back to council for a motion. Councilmember Cordova.
I go ahead and motion to accept the resolution.
Thank you, and I need a second.
I'll second.
And I have a second. Any additional questions or concerns? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes 5-0. All right, the next item on the agenda is written communications. Do we have any additional written communications?
Nothing.
Okay. And now we will do consent item number 4, as pulled by Councilmember Starbuck. The item is Letter of Support, Housing Authority of the Santa Barbara County Conversion of Rental Housing Units from Public Housing to Project-Based Voucher-Assisted Units was pulled, and we have Community Development Director Christy Alicorn to present and answer any questions.
I just have a couple of questions. It's too much to have done during consent, Christy. I wish I could have got with you yesterday for a little bit. Some of my concerns here are we're going to pass off HUD housing now to a nonprofit housing provider. No, we'll call them SURF Development here. How many units does SURF Development currently control in our city?
So I don't have that exact number, but Surf Development is the housing authority. Same.
Same?
Same.
So it's an internal transfer that they're doing here.
Yes, that's their nonprofit housing development agency that they utilize in order to do things like this.
So how long will this covenant be on these transferred units here?
So these aren't covenants now. This doesn't have anything to do with the city. This is just the city. The only role we're playing here is supporting in order to make their application stronger and for them to get this HUD approval to convert these units from, what do we call it, public housing to a project-based housing voucher. And the benefit of that is public housing is much less on the revenue side when it comes to production of revenue. And when you look at a voucher-based system, it's much higher on revenue production, and therefore creating the ability for the housing authority, AKA also known as surf development, to better maintain and service their existing units. I think they do a great job of utilizing the different programs that HUD offers, and that's why so many of their developments look so good in our community.
Okay, well, I'm going to use one of my favorite words. So this property will remain in perpetuity forever.
Just as it would if it stays as it is right now.
Okay, so
Nothing's going to change.
nothing will change on that. There's a mention in this staff report about location of future low-income housing. That is unknown to us where that is going to be located at, I assume then.
Where in the staff report? I don't remember anything talking about future.
I didn't flag it, but it was part of the reason that they wanted to do it. I noticed that it says there will be no maintenance or repairs or anything, so basically that renovation, they're not going to come back and look for tax credits on any of this because it's already within their
It's not
jurisdiction
eligible.
then. Yeah, I just go back to LHCDC, and one of the grand jury's findings was the one provider too large.
So the difference there is LHCDC was not a housing authority. A public
No.
housing authority is very different from what LHCDC was.
Right, but they were a low-income housing provider also at that time, so
Just very
it's-
different type
yes.
of agency.
Right. Well, that's why I'm pulling this. I had just a couple
Yeah.
of questions on it. It's like, failure of oversight. It hasn't been that long.
Right.
But it does bring me to another point here. I was looking for the contract compliancy, and on reoccurring items, we have not listed when we're going to do our contract compliancy report. I thought it was January, July.
So the way the monitoring report works is you receive one in January and then you receive one again in July. The one in July is the one where we go out and we do the site visits and we look at the units 25%. We did not do that this last year because of COVID. We cannot enter any of the units, and HUD has actually spelled out some very explicit justification for it. So that didn't occur, but we are still checking rent rolls and all of that. So we're still compiling the reports based on desk audit reviews, and everything was compliant. So I think the last one you should have was a memo format. The next one will be the actual, so you'll get a memo format probably soon here.
And then the actual one, yes.
Yeah.
I just feel it's important that we go ahead and include contract compliancy reporting on our annual recurring items. It's something that we don't want to do again.
Right.
But no, thank you. I wish I could have got with you on the holiday.
No problem. I'm available.
Councilmember Cordova.
And I think what Councilmember Starbuck was looking for is on the letter that's dated December 11th that went to our city manager. It does say in the last paragraph on the first page of the letter that the funds received from the sale will be used to finance future affordable housing elsewhere in Santa Barbara County.
So I could speak to that. It goes into the kitty. It's more revenue for them. And then if they finally get a project that gets all the way up there and passes all the councils and planning commissions and everybody, that'll give them extra money to build.
Any other questions? Given this was a consent item, do we need to open it for public comment as its own independent item, council?
I suppose we don't, because there was a comment already on the consent calendar.
Thank you. So I will entertain a motion. to accept item 4?
I'll go ahead and accept staff recommendation then.
Thank you, and I need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes 5-0. All right, here is your final opportunity this evening for oral communications for 2 minutes on city matters. The number to call is 805-875-8201, 805-875-8201. Remember to mute your TV, radio, or PC.
Hello, you're live in the council meeting. Please go ahead with your comment.
Thank you. Hi, this is Jerome. Been a Lompoc resident for years. I very much appreciate the council's interest and in the new beginnings for RV parkers. I point out that this, however, is not Santa Barbara. Their optimism, although recognized, is possibly inappropriate. I respect that they're trying to do what they can do, but we've got RVs parked on the streets. We hope that they will be able to find adequate housing. Second issue, I very much am upset that there are derelict vehicles on the street parked within a block of my house, and hope that at some point the city police department will address those derelict vehicles that have been there for months. I don't mean weeks, I mean months. We appreciate the efforts that the city's making. I know that there's a lot of stuff on the city's plate, but for those of us who live in the neighborhood, we very much appreciate trying to see these issues addressed. Thank you so much for your attention at the City Council.
Thank you for your call. The number to call is 805-875-8201, 805-875-8201. Seeing no additional calls, we will close oral communication and bring it back to council for comments and meeting reports, and we will begin with Councilmember Ball.
That's my mic, okay. Learning
You'll get the
green
hang
buttons.
of it.
Working on that. So. Dirk's new haircut threw me off just a little bit. I get confused a little bit. Yeah, I like it. I like it. I just wanted to say I had the pleasure to thank the mayor for transitioning me into the role. I virtually attended my first board meeting with Communify, and I'm learning about all the great things that they're doing for our county and helping out, especially those that are vulnerable. And it's a great operation and group, and I look forward to learning more and sharing more about their impacts on our local community. And then just one suggestion. I know a lot of people, I'm imagining, are a tiny bit frustrated, but it sounds like there's been a delay of a minute or two or a couple of minutes. So I want us to be very cautious that we don't deny someone the opportunity to have public comment just because the delay went a couple minutes and what they're saying isn't real time. So I just hope we can address that eventually.
Councilmember Starbuck.
No reports other than I got a new haircut.
Thank you. Councilmember Cordova.
No report.
Thank you. Councilmember Vega.
No reports.
Thank you. I attended the Northern California Power Agency's Legislative and Regulation Committee meeting, the Santa Barbara County Legislative call regarding COVID-19. The Santa Barbara County LAFCO, which is the Local Agency Formation Committee Organization Special Meeting, the League of California Cities Transportation, Communications, and Public Works Committee meeting, and the virtual celebration of the Martin Luther King Jr. Day yesterday. And I want to thank the local committee that organized that for doing so this year. Community partners in caring are looking for volunteers in the Lompoc area to deliver groceries, meal preps, check-ins, calls, and appointments. And they have both a great website and social media presence. There is reimbursement for mileage, and it is a great way to support those in our community. So again, it's Community Partners in Caring. And there will be a barbecue fundraiser for the Lompoc Boys and Girls Club on Saturday, January 30th, with pickup between 3 and 5 p.m. It's a $50 family meal, and tickets can be purchased at the Boys and Girls Club, at Lompoc Foursquare Church, or on Eventbrite. And you can contact either of those locations for additional information. I thank everyone for being here tonight and for tuning in. We will adjourn this meeting until our next regular meeting at 6:30 p.m. on February 2nd, 2021.